Hello, everyone. This is recording number 9 for a class on early Greek philosophy. We are still talking about Parmenides, and today I want to talk about the so called way of opinion. Now, recall the structure of Parmenides' philosophical poem. We have first a kind of narrative intro, and then we have the famous way of truth, and then the way of opinion. All the premises and ideas that count as Parmenidean come from the way of truth. So those are, being is one, being is ungenerated, being is unwavering, and so on. And the thought that, that which is the object of thought and speech, that's being. And there is this exhaustive and exclusive disjunction between being and not being. So that is incredibly influential. And there is quite a bit of testimony about the way of being, but there is not a lot of testimony about the way of opinion. What we kind of know, however, is that it is about cosmology. And that raises one of the most contested questions in scholarship about Parmenides. How is it possible that Parmenides, who just told us that thought and language and so on is about being, now talks about cosmology? That is extraordinarily puzzling. And just to back up and be extra clear about why that is a puzzle. So we saw this idea that being is that which is, the object of theorizing, as we might put this. And being is one and not in motion. But cosmology seems to be about many things which are in motion. So it is just seemingly incompatible with the way of truth that Parmenides comes up with his own cosmology. And that can be made even more salient when we look at the moment in the poem where we transition, as it were, from the way of truth to the way of opinion. There, the text says, well, from now on, be warned, as it were, only mortal opinions and a deceitful ordering of words. One conclusion that you may draw, and that is what Jonathan Barnes argued in his influential commentary from 1979, is that genuinely Parmenides' cosmology is a bunch of falsehoods. And that's just it. He's telling us that this is going to be deceitful. And then you may think, well, that is just kind of too extreme. Why would he come up with his cosmology and then, all we can say about it is that it's falsehoods? And a lot of scholars have sort of responded to this and come up with alternative readings. One fairly recent contribution is by Jenny Bryan from 2018, and she argues, well, just note that the majority of the ancient thinkers seriously assumes that Parmenides had his own cosmology. And in doing so, they also ascribe quite specific insights to him. And it just doesn't seem to make sense that someone works on specific questions in cosmology about particular celestial entities if they think that, well, this is kind of on the whole an entirely flawed enterprise anyway. So a third approach that a number of scholars have pursued, and one example is James Warren in his introduction from 2007, is to focus on a moment in the poem which says, well, that it's a tricky line and difficult to translate, but something like that what we are going to get here is at least better than what we get in other proposals. So that could suggest a kind of comparative assessment. Even though cosmology is flawed, what we are going to get from Parmenides is somehow better than what we get from others. And it's a difficult question whether we think that this kind of comparative ranking makes sense if cosmology is as deeply confused as it can seem given the premises in the way of truth. So I'm going to leave it here in terms of options. There are many more interpretive options. I just want to invite you to read about this and think about this. And I want to end with the following thought. The puzzle that I've been discussing is, I think, not merely an interpretive one, but also a philosophical one. You may sort of ask yourself if it were the case that the most basic account of reality is about highly abstract entities, how would such an account relate to any potential account of sense perceptible entities in the natural world? Plato takes it that that is a philosophically deep and extraordinarily complex question. And I want to suggest that he may be right about that.